Welcome to another episode of CNC's Claims Corner. We are live from the field again today. We're actually out here at ServPro, and we're going to take a look at a couple of things on the moisture meters. With me today is David James, the Property Claims Manager with CNC, and T. John Mayhall with ServPro of Mobile County. Now, we are actually out here today again. I mean, last time we came out here, T. John went over some great information on dehumidifiers. We went through what to use them, how to use them, what not to use, the different types of dehumidifiers, air movers, everything related to drying. The good thing about all that is, I don't know if I would classify it as a good thing, but the day before, we actually had a loss at our own facility. We had a water fountain just bust downstairs, flooded the whole area. Well, luckily, ServPro came out. They did the assessment, they set up the equipment, they monitored it, they did everything. And it was actually a really smooth operation. The good thing about all that happening is when we came here to this facility and we're looking at the equipment, I knew exactly what we were talking about. Sure. I mean, because it was, I just had that done in my own facility. Our own facility flooded, and now I knew why they placed something in a certain area, because T. John was able to give us all that information, explain it to us while we were here at the facility. So same thing with, and a real quick shout out. So if you want to watch that video again, that episode, it is episode 3, ServPro of Mobile discussing drying equipment, and that can be found on CNC's YouTube channel. We're actually out here today to talk about moisture meters. And honestly, I know nothing about moisture meters. I don't know when to use it, how to use it, if it's used properly, what to do with it. Do they work? Do they don't work? If there's certain brands, if you get a $3,000 brand versus a $30 brand, is it actually there's value into that? And I think one of the reasons probably why I'm not really familiar with moisture meters is because really it's kind of an unspoken rule in flood that you don't use a moisture meter when you're looking at a property. You don't actually use it. And I want to say, and I'm just thinking out loud and the way I'm thinking about this, it's probably a lot to do with the fact that most people don't know how to use it to begin with. You have a moisture meter, what do you do with it? And you really don't know how to do with it. Now on the property side, tell us a little bit, I mean, how do we use them on the property side?
Well, it's like you just mentioned, it's really comes to more of being intimidated by it because you've never seen it before. You don't use it. So they are a very useful tool if you learn it and use it correctly. I mean, it helps you in your investigation and be able to properly address the claim and the damages and makes it go that much more smoother if you're using it correctly and educated on it.
So I guess the good thing is, like David said, on the property side, if you know how to use it, same thing on the flood side, if you know how to use it, then in some cases, but that is why we're here, because T. John is actually going to talk to us about moisture meters and actually how they work and how to use them and everything like that.
And I don't know how to use them either. So it's
that's even
great.
better.
We're all learning today.
This will be a very short program.
That's exactly right. Shortest episode ever. That's right.
But I do have a question for you. Okay, if we're going to talk about moisture meters, how can we actually test them without having any moisture?
Yeah, so that's a bit of the problem. Like when we do these things, I mean, I think you can't really get a good sense when you're trying to utilize them unless there's real world application. And okay. we don't really have. We need to find a way to do it. Yes, you gotta have something to test.
We obviously don't want to do anything here, so I'm just going to pretend, and maybe we'll just do it that way. I'm just going to pretend that.
Yeah, we get your pretend because this is
we get your wall wet. So I'm just gonna. Okay, so now we have water here.
But that's not gonna work. Let's do it right if we're gonna do it. We need to make it.
Pretend.
Right.
So well, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it right. Well, then. So I guess now we actually have moisture on the wall
to look at
that we can measure. Actually look
here's
at.
The deal. Look, this is why you don't send adjusters to do a mitigation guys deal. So what you got to do is you really got to get it going and help out to get it wet, because that's the only way you're gonna know. So
you got something to work with, right?
So now we have actually.
Glad that's your wall and not ours.
Moisture.
Well, here's the best part about it.
Your facility.
By the way, we do know how to dry it. So that's okay. It's not a big problem. And on a side note, Greg, I didn't want to tell you, you didn't know this, a little known fact. We actually own that fountain company. Can I tell you, it's been the best promoter of our business since we bought it. It's the best thing.
It hasn't broken yet.
Yeah, okay.
Need to get out there.
That's good.
So yes, now we actually have a wet wall and a wet floor. And obviously, we're in a situation where we can definitely see the moisture and the damages to the floor and I mean, how wet it is.
That's right.
But a lot of times, I mean, the wall,
Can't tell on it.
is it wet? Is it not wet? Is there moisture in it? What, I mean, and maybe the water came in from behind it or came down from the ceiling and got behind it. We can't see it.
100%.
So
Gotta be.
let's talk about moisture meters.
Let's do, because I'll tell you what the technology we have now is changing how mitigation works. Years and years ago, we had the old knee test. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that theory around mitigation. The knee test was you bend down, touch it, you go, yeah, that's wet right there. We gotta fix that.
Can you show me the knee test?
I just have these pressed.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the highly technical way we used to do it. Since then, thankfully, technology has evolved and we have a myriad of different units and different tools that we can use. We have penetrating meters, we have non-penetrating meters, and then of course we have thermal cameras, but 9 times out of 10 with what we do, we're working with penetrating meters and the non-penetrating meters to help us understand how to read, because they physically actually read the moisture that is in the material itself, which is crucial, because as you said, here we can obviously see it, but 9 times out of 10, as y'all know too, you get to a site, you're playing, it's forensic. You're trying to understand how to find it, where it happened.
So from an adjuster standpoint, I know you're going to talk about them, but if I had these, I mean, we've got 5 of them right here on the table.
Mhm.
Which one do you use for, is it like for carpet or tile, ceiling tiles, plaster? You can see how it can be intimidating, and we just, I'm not going to fool with it for at all. Just going
Right.
to let the mitigation company handle it.
Well, and I have to say, and not selfishly, there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
We are trained to do this.
Mhm.
We go to school, we get licensed, we deal with it every day, day in, day out. So if you're comfortable with that and just saying, hey, let the mitigator handle it, great, that's what we're there for.
Right.
If not though, you're right. You have to know, you definitely have to have the basics at least, or you could find yourself in trouble. The worst thing anybody wants to do is take one of these tools and misuse it and tell a client, hey, this is dry, you're good to go.
Right.
And it turns out you've actually got moisture back there and you have a much bigger issue. Because once you use one of these tools, frankly, in the world's eyes, you become the authority.
Right.
And so if you're gonna do it, you need to make sure, excuse me, you know how to do it.
And that's a good point, understanding how to use these. And also, we would rather the professional that's used to doing these over and over again. One thing I have seen common is adjusters go out there and just for a verification, grab one of these moisture meters and put on the wall, and then they're saying, here's what I'm seeing, and based on what I'm reading here, this is how much we do believe this is damage, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
They're not the professionals. They really shouldn't be doing that. But it would be good to give them some type of guidance
Absolutely.
and say, okay, here's how we need a professional, but here's the information that would help you understand, yes, this is right, or no, this is wrong.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely. And so let's just kind of we're going to work from right to left. The first one that I would say is the most common is the penetrating meter. Now, what we tend to use and what we like to use is it's a Delmhorst BD 2100. It's a pretty simple, straightforward penetrating meter, super easy to use, 3 settings, so you can read different, gives you different values for wood, gypsum, hard surface, and you just have to make sure you understand which one of those are. To your point, Craig, if you don't read the manual, which I know is difficult for a lot of people, especially possibly males, that if you don't read the manual, you're never going to know exactly which setting goes with what, because what it's doing is adjusting sensitivity of these 2 probes to moisture levels in the material. So if you're using, say, a concrete setting on drywall, it's not going to show that it's as wet or there's as much moisture as there would be, because drywall is a totally different type of surface. It's semi-porous, it's much more dense.
Right.
So you've got to make sure you've got the right setting. That's first and foremost when you use it. The second piece about the penetrating meter is it causes damage. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I have 100% seen mitigators walk into a job and slam one of these in the middle of a wall to go ahead and find and get a moisture read. Probably not what your customer or client's looking for. They want something with a little bit more finesse.
Right.
So what we tend to do, if it's all right, we always start bottom up.
which makes sense, especially in a flood situation,
100%.
water's coming up.
Mhm.
But what if it's coming from the ceiling?
Well, that's another reason though you start bottom up, because again, we don't see, there's not a lot of visual indicators. So if I start up here, I could go, oh yeah, this wall's good, and walk away. But the problem is I get down here, I get a little lower,
Kind of,
Yeah,
Okay.
because it could have crept in from the side.
Yeah,
It very much,
absolutely.
it could have gone down a chase, hit the floor and started to run. We have a whole different situation. So all you want to do is you make sure you get both of these probes firmly in the material, right up to where it butts up against it. A little tip and trick that I was taught and have always used, make sure we're on the right setting. For drywall, we use setting number 3. And so with that, you get right down here in the seam of the baseboard and the drywall, and you get the probes to where they kind of go right in there in between the two. And then you hit the button with the 2, water, moisture, and it's wet. A red light will come on if it's very wet. 4.8 was the reading, just to kind of put out there. 0.3, 0.4 is about what you want to say is normal with this meter on that setting.
Okay. So I saw, you notice how you put it in and then you press the button, you pull it out immediately.
Mhm.
So it's getting you instant reading.
Oh, yeah,
Or something.
absolutely.
It's not like you have to keep it in there for a minute or 2 or 3 or something like that, like a
Thermometer.
thermometer.
You gotta
Yeah,
let
like a
it
thermometer
sit.
where you gotta sit there for a couple, or like you get your COVID test, you gotta wait 20 minutes for that. So by the way, I have COVID, so no.
Do you really? So do I. That's perfect. We'll be good. Yeah, right on. So no, not at all. It's immediate. As soon as you get those probes in there, it's good. And the reason we kind of start with this is the reason we love the penetrating meter is it's going to give you, in our opinions at least, the most accurate reading you're going to get. You are physically putting these
Getting
probes
into
in that material to make sure that you're really finding out if there's moisture in there or not. The downside is it does create holes. And that's the reason we do this seam, because if you get it down in this seam, very rarely are you going to, there they are right there. But in a normal situation, you're not going to see those 2 holes long-term, anything like that. It's pretty hidden. A lot of times, especially if they've caulked a joint, once you put it through that caulk and it gets into the drywall, the caulk kind of fills back in. Once you pull the probes, you're in good shape. Client's happy. Nobody gets a little upset because you're putting holes in the wall.
Absolutely.
Compared to having holes like when you're you see the line item in Exactimate comes to mind, like the dry cavity holes where you're going in there and you've caused that much damage to where it's that obvious to where you have to go in and fill it.
And a great example of it is the attachment. So that's a cool part about the Delm Horse has it. Most of them do. They have this little area where you can put attachments on, and you have something like this. These are Teflon probes, and this absolutely will cause those holes.
Right.
The great part about having this, though, is it's super beneficial when you have situations where this is about the width of that drywall. But if you have insulation that you feel like, man, I really feel like that insulation's wet, it's a top-down loss. And I'm pretty sure this usually will get deep enough in where it'll pick up that moisture in the insulation, or the insulation has made the drywall wet enough that you're going to pick it up in the drywall. I'll give you a great example, though. North Carolina, I think it was Florence was the hurricane in North Carolina. All of the homes out there on the coast, when they built them, they put framing, insulation, a sheet of plastic, and then put drywall over it. So we were reading walls with non-pins or even with penetrating, and we were getting real light moisture. We're going, there's no way. We know this is wet. We know it's wet. I had 4 of these FedExed up from our office because we didn't have them on the truck. They set them up, we threw one in the wall, and it pegged out because all that insulation behind it was sopping wet. This probe just couldn't get deep enough to really read that wet insulation that was behind the wall. So great tool to have. You just want to use it sparingly.
Right.
So you're not throwing these giant holes in people's walls as you go.
Right.
So that's the great part about this. These are also really good for wood. The biggest key for wood, though, is we'll have to pretend because we don't have a wood floor. You can put it into the wood floor. The biggest piece is when you go to put it into the wood floor, you don't want to put it between the wood slats, because if you have that, just as you can see with your fingers, there's a kind of a ridge or a gap there. Airflow is going to come out of those connection points much easier than where you have a solid piece of wood. So if I put it in the seam of the wood, I go, oh, well, I'm not causing damage. That's much better. But the problem is moisture is going to escape faster. It seems odd, but I promise it's true. That area will be drier than the actual solid material. So you want to find a space where you have solid material and put that probe in there. Hardwood floor is a little tough. Try to find a knot, trying to find a darker spot because you have, different coloration in the wood. Try to find those and then get that probe in and kind of gently push it in and go ahead and hit the button to see if it's got moisture in it. And they have one of these also that's called a hammer probe, which is how you can read subfloor. So it's basically, regrettably, I don't have one. We started moving some stuff over to our new facility, but it's basically a short probe about 1 inch long in a sliding post where you can literally hammer that probe down into the wood to get to the subfloor to be able to do it. Great for floors that have sleepers, where it's a raised system and you can kind of get through that initial top layer to try to find moisture.
I didn't know that. Yeah, but that was, I'm glad you
Holy
brought that
mackerel,
up as far as
we were actually learning stuff. Let's
getting to the hardwood, and that was gonna be one of my questions as far as the knot. I didn't
Yeah, hardwoods are tough. I will tell you, and it kind of leads us into the next one. 9 times out of 10, if we have hardwood floors, I'm going to use a non-penetrating.
Yeah.
Non-penetrating is much easier to deal with when you have situations where you don't want to damage any of the actual product or material. This meter in particular, we just use a Tramex. Has 3 different settings: wood, drywall, plaster, brick. So you've got your super hard surface, wood and drywall. And the point of it is, and it's going to be tough possibly to pick up on camera, but, well, you can tell my hand's dry. I mean, Johnny, give me a swipe. Come on, Craig. You're not a germaphobe. There you go. So it's dry, but with this, it picks up like I'm reading wet. You see the meter, it reads as if it's pegged out. I know. See?
You're alive.
That's how you go. Thank God.
Check your heartbeat.
For right now, yeah. So the point is, it picks up moisture phenomenally well. These 2 pads on the back is what does it. And realistically, what it's actually doing is setting up a signal to where it comes out about 3/8 inch, about 1/4 of an inch, and can read moisture into the material. So I can do the same thing the penetrating meter can do. I just don't have to poke holes into it. It actually pushes the signal in to be able to bounce back. It's basically, if you think of it, it's kind of like pushing out, not electricity, but that type of a signal bounces back off the moisture. That's what's giving you the level of, it bounces back so far or so fast or so hard, the needle goes further up because it's wetter.
So it's picking up moisture in your palm, basically.
That's exactly right, which is you can't see it just like you can on a wall. But the point is it picks it up. And if you have a wood floor, well, great case in point. So,
Okay, so we got.
that's now first
thing here.
So here's a great point of what you were saying.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't put it on the right setting, you're not going to look at it. It's not going to show the right way. This is
Right.
concrete. This is commercial carpet, no padding underneath, concrete. On wood, it's showing about 14 on the top scale. Now the bottom scale is what you want to use for non-wood, which is showing about 40. You switch it to drywall, jumps up. You switch it to plaster brick, which is also concrete, goes almost to
Right.
0.
Right.
So those settings are hugely important, because if you don't have it on the right setting, I can put this on something and go, oh, that's wet.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, just like this, if you had it on the wood setting, you immediately go, oh, that's wet.
Mhm.
When it shouldn't be, when it's
When
not.
reality
Now,
is
if you put it
it's
over
just
here, if you
Oh,
put it
yeah.
over here, it's probably gonna go to the roof. Yeah,
Immediately it goes to 30.
so here on the right setting was 0, and over here it's 30.
Absolutely.
Because now that you're applying it properly, you're using it properly.
100%. And this is actually a little bit tricky too, a phenomenal meter, but it's also a little tricky that if you use it, now it won't pick up really here because this truly is dry, but let's say there's just some residual moisture, not a lot, but there's still some, is you can have people, if you push, let's say maybe I'm just a little tired and I put this down and I'm kind of leaning on it. If you push down on these meters, you get that needle to come up a little bit, and it's still wet, but what you're doing is you're pushing it in to kind of push more closer into the moisture. That signal's bouncing back faster, so the needle's pushing up. And reality is, how you want to use this meter, you put it on the ground. You can just set it on the ground, but if you just put it on the ground and just lightly kind of have a little bit of pressure towards just firmly both pads on the ground, that's all you need.
Okay,
So-
so trick question.
Perfect.
Which one's more accurate?
I was just about to ask that. Why
So-
would you choose that one over that one?
So,
The
okay, so
reality-
that one does it by the little meter, and
Mhm.
it gives you numbers.
Right.
So if you were to stick that one in there and put that one up next to it as well, you think you're gonna get a similar reading?
Yes, yes. As far as you're definitely going to get a similar reading. Personally, I don't feel like you can replace physically getting into the material.
and I would
That's
agree with
going to give you your most accurate read.
Especially when or honestly, I'd probably use this all the time.
Well, you could.
I mean, I really would, because it seems like you're
Thank
getting.
God you write the estimate, so you can
bigger-
put all that repair in there.
Well, I'll take that back. I am not going to do it. I am not going to do that. But if I was going to do that,
a putty knife and some mud with it.
if you said here, you have 3 options to use for a moisture meter, I would say this, I mean, immediately, without knowing anything about, I'm immediately going to this one.
So I'm going to say something here, and don't get upset with me. But that's exactly why we're doing this, and it's exactly why you shouldn't touch meters.
Exactly.
And here's why.
I agree.
Because this
Yeah, as you take it in my hand.
goes, I don't want you, I'm afraid. So this actually is, like I was saying before, North Carolina, we were trying to make sure we got to that wet insulation that was in the walls because we couldn't get it because of how they had constructed. If I take this meter and I put it on an interior wall, there's no insulation.
Yeah.
So effectively what I'm going to do is I'm going to push through that drywall this into a vacant space or a void. Now, it
That's nice
should
and dry.
pick it up. It should pick it up because the
Okay.
Teflon goes all the way back.
Okay.
But gosh forbid, for some reason, the tip can't get it because this is coated. These tips are really, you can see the tips are what's showing actual metal.
Yeah.
So if it gets onto this coating and it's not picking up, you could punch this through an interior wall and go, dry as
That's
bone,
dry.
we're perfect. And you pull it out and you could have a problem because you got moisture in the wall.
What about electrical and plumbing in that? You don't want to puncture that with those things too. So another, you can be careful
Probably
with
not
that.
something that would be incredibly fun. No,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and the good thing is these are not incredibly sharp. So through conduit, things like that, you
Okay.
should be okay. But I will tell you, I'm sure y'all have seen
You
it.
probably feel it.
Some guys get a little excited. They, you know, they're got some
And I'm sure if
aggression.
you hit a electrical wire, you'd probably feel it.
You'll know.
So, I mean, like plugging this into the.
Yeah, well, it's the
so,
perfect
yeah,
width.
It is
You wanna
perfect
throw it in
width.
there.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah.
kids playing around with that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, but yeah, to your point and to your question, I truly do. This is what we do. If I was going to tell you all our secrets, here's exactly what we recommend. This goes in you've got a hip pocket in the work pant. You've got this. If you're in a situation where you have any doubt, you're using the non-pen because you're trying to be very cognizant of the customer's items and be very kind to their materials. But if you get any question, you pull this out of your hip pocket and you can double check your reading with the penetrating.
Right.
But if I can do it in a day-to-day basis, if I can read that drywall in the seam, if I can use this without causing any kind of cosmetic damage, I'm going to use this every single time. Right. Yeah, I just prefer it.
And plus it matches.
It does. It's like,
to the colors. I think
it's
that's
not a
critical.
mistake that it's
Yeah,
orange. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Well, I like the fact that it's orange because it really stands out and you can see it. I mean, because if I had it on the table here and a bunch of other materials, I can immediately go, oh, yeah, I got it. I'm good to go.
That's right. And you don't want to lose it. So yeah, and I know it's not something that's asked, but you talk about adjusters using these tools. So this kit, each one of these kits costs us right around $1,200, $1,200 to $1,300. So I would also say that if you're an adjuster and you're going, man, I'm going to have my own meters and I'm going to do it right, don't go to Home Depot and buy a moisture meter for $30. That's a bad idea. Get the right stuff. But if you're going to get it, be invested in it and know that you're gonna pay for it, and it's great to have, but you're gonna want to make sure you know what you're doing so you can use it right.
Right.
Yeah,
That brings up another question. So you can't really, say if you got contents,
Mhm.
what, do you really want to stick that in the couch, the leather couch or the
Sure.
table or the furniture or anything?
Absolutely.
Which
I'll tell you
one do
what.
use?
So I'm gonna jump off.
And stick it in my leather sofa.
I'm gonna jump off camera for a second here.
Those are some fighting.
You know,
Um,
I don't, it's just, I don't think it would be very.
Yeah, like I said before, we don't care. No, look, so here's the deal, to your question. Leather, absolutely not. Bad idea, right? Because it's a solid piece of material. But if you have a couch, if you have cloth, you've got fabrics, no different than putting it into carpet.
Yeah.
I can take these probes, I can put it into this cloth chair and I pull it out. I'm pretty sure nobody in this earth is gonna be able to find where those two holes went in. But it is great to have because you do want to know, draperies, anything like that. It's, look, I need to check. I need to check it all. I've absolutely used these in attics where to the touch, I joked about the old knee test, but in the attics, that's a very real thing. Everybody gets up there and just starts feeling insulation to see if it's wet or dry. That's all fine and good, but if it's a cold day, maybe you're not quite getting it. You take this, you stick it in the insulation, find where your break point is. We'll go usually about 6 inches past it to make sure we're good. We get dry for 6 inches past and then pull all that to make sure we don't miss anything. Yeah.
Interesting.
100%. So there's also one other type we don't have here. And I want to
Okay.
throw it out there just in case
Okay.
anybody has them. So you don't have to have separate meters for all these things. They make combined units where the penetrating meter is also the non-penetrating meter. Some of them also have the thermal hygrometer. It's all built into one easy unit. You can take it anywhere.
Yeah.
These can be great. Our personal opinion is we don't use them because from what we found, this back plate, now it doesn't have it on the BD2100, they just use the same cast or the same mold. This back plate is traditionally where you would pick up or use the non-penetrating. So you stick it in like this and then you change the setting, you put the back plate down, and you use it like a non-pin. We've just found, we used to buy those quite a bit. They're about $2,000 each. But that back plate just never seemed to be as accurate as we wanted it to. Where if I took a VD 2100 and a Tramex and I used those and then used that combo unit, I never felt like we were getting the same accuracy in the reading between the two units. But nothing wrong with them, just a personal preference at that point. Definitely a lot easier than carrying around a kit.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, like you pointed out, you know, adjusters that are out there that are thinking about this and wanting to have it in their arsenal, I guess you want to call it that, their toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't know if this is a moisture meter or not.
No,
But-
so that's my TV remote.
That's material. So, all right, we're gonna put this one down.
No, that's a
So,
hygrometer. That'll measure your humidity and your temperature.
but it's better to have let me see this real quick. It's better to have a good device that is going to give you a proper reading, as long as you know actually how to use this device, instead of just going, oh, okay, we're good to go here. Let's test the wall out. I had some flood damage in here. Oh, yeah, we're good to go. And never even actually penetrate the wall. So it is very valuable. Now, we'll ask you a question.
Sure.
How much does this cost?
That, like I said, I think those individually are right around 600. I think
Okay.
it's 6 or 7.
Okay.
Tramic's a little less. I know the whole kit altogether is 13, something like that.
Okay.
12, 13.
Well, like T. John pointed out, he was actually going to give this to me as a parting gift today, just because I showed up. So, he's going to actually hand me this. But I do have,
Right.
so my real question
It's
is,
an award presentation.
yeah, it's a word presentation. My real question. So we have penetrating.
Yep.
And we have non-penetrating, like we
Mhm.
talked about obviously the kind of the differences that you have where that. I've seen situations and files that come across where, and I'm sure the adjusters have seen this as well, where they have all these beautiful pictures of all these really pretty, colorful pictures
Oh, they're great.
that are just multicolors and the blues and reds and greens, and then they're saying, oh, it's all blue down here, so it's damaged, it's wet,
Yeah.
it needs to be done.
Bad news. Yeah.
Where does that come into play,
Looks
folks?
like a Jackson Pollock painting. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yes, I mean, where does that come in?
So what you're talking about there is when they're using a FLIR. It's a thermal camera, basically. And look, I am sure this is going, I'm gonna fire this up. It takes a second to get going. This is gonna upset somebody, I'm sure, out there watching. I will tell you, Craig, this is not my favorite tool. I wish I could tell you it was. It really isn't. The bottom line for this tool is simple. It's great to try to find maybe your migration line where moisture has stopped, and it gives you a sense if you can't figure anything else out. Let's say that this carpet was all the same color, or if it was a beige carpet padded and you just can't get a visual on it. Personally, I'm not really sure what the issue is of grabbing the penetrating and pushing out 6 inches and you find the line. There's a lot of guys who want to do it a lot faster. That's great for this. It can tell you, okay, there's a color difference. It's a starting point. What you can't do is use this as a moisture meter, because all it does, as you stated, is read pretty colors. So
That's what it looks like to me when I'm looking at it.
no,
It's
you're
like-
pretty much dead on.
It's like, this is great.
Pretty much dead on. So, but what it does is it's just reading temperature. So like
Okay,
the
that's my
science,
question.
right? The science of drying is you put air across a wet material to change surface area. By changing the surface area temperature, more specifically surface area temperature,
Okay.
by changing that temperature, making it cooler, the moisture wants to push out of the material to equalize in the room, okay? So if you're putting air across something, usually, and the whole point of science drying is it's dropping the temperature so the moisture jumps out, thus it's cooler. Showing something in a purple or a blue doesn't particularly mean it's wet, or showing it in a red or a yellow doesn't mean it's dry. It's just hot. It's hot,
It's just hot or
wet.
cold.
That's right. It's hot, wet. It's cold, wet. Doesn't tell you it's hot or dry. So it's,
But it doesn't even tell you it's wet. It just tells you if it's hot or cold.
right. Okay, that's exactly right.
Okay. But then we have a situation where it potentially could be wet.
Because of the change in the color. Because typically things wet are cooler than things that are
But that's
dry.
still not giving us any value.
So stand right there for me. Don't
Okay.
move. All right. So what we're gonna do with the camera?
I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna be blue because I'm gonna be cool.
Yeah, it's astounding that you are so right. So as you can see, you obviously put off more heat than something that is totally soaking wet, which
I
is
gotta
a
check
good
this
thing.
out.
That is another
David, get over
part.
here.
That is
You're
another
next,
part,
David.
by the way. We got another bucket. We're gonna do that and show how you turn
Yes.
blue.
So there's David.
So there's David, same sort of thing.
Do I have a heartbeat?
Wow.
See, there's
you
a fun
are
part.
red.
Yeah, yeah. Are you sure you don't have?
Okay, so let's, so stay right there. Let's get a bucket of water.
That's right. So, but here's what I will say, David, if you don't mind, shift to the side real quick. And this actually is interesting to see. So here's the wall. And as you can see, as we pan up, there's the drywall. And as you pan down, there is validity to, yes, it changes color. The moisture is going to make the material cooler. It's going to increasingly get kind of more purple, and then you get down to the ground, and you can obviously see very clearly in the carpet,
Absolutely.
there's a line. That's what's so helpful. If you don't have good visual indicators, this will absolutely help you see where your migration line is.
So show that again. I want anybody else to see that as well.
So you can see the wall, and you can see that defined line on the edge where we didn't throw a bucket of water. And as you come down to the carpet, you're like, well, all the carpet's going to be cool. It's on a slab. Nope. If you come down a little further, you can even see the splatters and that difference between wet material that's just cooler versus dry material, which tends to be a little bit warmer. So it's a tool to have.
Okay.
I think you and I
Because
talked
now
about.
I like this now. Now that
Yeah.
you're going to teach me,
This
I'm
is
like,
fun.
oh yeah, I'd love to have one.
Everybody loves these.
Yeah.
We have like 7 of them and we don't use them. And we do, it just,
Okay.
we really don't use them
You
that
go
often.
back to,
Because you can't beat, I want to know if it's wet or it's dry. My
that is
world,
absolutely true.
my world is all
And I
about,
agree.
I need to get it dry, right?
Yeah.
I have got to make sure I dry this
Yeah.
place out because that's step number 1 to
Yeah.
keep us from having microbial issues and everything else. To stop damage, I have got to get the moisture out. That's why I want to know exactly what
Yeah.
that moisture level is.
And obviously when we're looking at this image here, we know it's wet because, I mean, I
Because
didn't
we did it.
throw the water on the wall like somebody else did, but like you said, you throw it on the wall, it's like, oh, I'm gonna try this because I know exactly what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but we're able to see that. So I could see that in a situation where, like, just for example, we look at another wall over here that's not even wet and picking up the different temperatures, that doesn't tell us.
Absolutely.
We know it's here because we saw it, but over here, we don't know, but it still could fluctuate.
You're absolutely right. But here's another great thing, like everything else, there's tips, there's tricks, there's tools to make sure you understand how to use it. Case in point, if we take this and we point it to the wall and say, and I'm not gonna say for sure, because I don't know how they ran wiring or conduit within the building, but if you catch a piece of conduit for electrical, say it's metal conduit, let's say you catch metal HVAC ducts in a commercial building. If you put this FLIR, or these thermal cameras on that metal material, it's gonna show up blue, it's gonna show up purple, because metal is cooler than most other materials. And you don't wanna catch yourself in that tough spot of, you put it on a wall, oh yeah, see, look at that straight line, you got water running straight down. No, that's conduit before you
And
start.
it's
tearing that
perfectly
wall.
straight.
Yeah, well, water does funny things.
And look at that ductwork up there. It's perfectly straight. Oh, and the wood air just came on. See how it's moving?
That's right. That's exactly right. So, it's, look,
Yeah.
everything in the toolkit, so to speak, to be able to determine levels of moisture, what's wet, what's dry, it's all has its place. And you just have to make sure you fully understand where it sits in the combination of tools to be able to establish where moisture is.
So is that where the TV remote comes into play?
Yes.
So you penetrated or not penetrated the wall, you've detected the moisture, now you got the equipment and you're drying it out.
Yeah, so the TV remote, or thermohygrometer, more technical term, is exactly that. This is much more so, we'll use this when we show up on a loss to just give us a sense of what the environment is. It's gonna tell me humidity, it's gonna tell me temperature. After that, what I'm using this for goes back to our first episode. I don't know it well enough to give it another plug, but our first episode where we talked about
Episode
equipment.
3.
There you go, episode 3. Our first episode, we talk about equipment. We'll use this to measure the output side on a dehumidifier to make sure that we're getting a drier air, check the humidity level of the air coming out, and the air needs to be hot coming out. Typically, it needs to be running, I've seen it as low in the kind of mid 80s, but really what the sweet spot we like to see is between 90 and 100 degrees coming out of the dehumidifier. And so we want to test that. Plus, we want to test the ambient temperature and humidity in the room, because when you have a fresh water loss, we don't feel it yet, but this water is making the humidity rise in this room.
Right.
And so when I get that humidity day 1, it should be at its highest point. Every day after that, I should see that humidity coming down in the actual space.
So that's what you're using to test the air.
Mhm.
So I thought you just walked up and went, yep, okay, that's it.
I did. That was back with the knee test.
Yeah, exactly. The knee test, it's wet, and the other test is,
That's right.
all right, it's
Right.
dry over here. Let's
Feels
go.
good.
It feels good.
You walk in, and this is my favorite. You walk in, you're like, yeah, I can feel the humidity. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, can you? That's good. Okay, well, that's perfect. We'll use that. You just write that in there.
We get my flare out and see how high.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, I need something else to measure, something else to tell me. What that
Okay,
is.
so
really, even if you're, from an adjuster standpoint, you need to know all this because it helps you to adjust the claim and know if it's being done correctly or not correctly,
You can, and again, I am not deterring or taking away any adjuster who says, look, I want to know how to use these tools rock solid. I want to make it part of my tool bag to where I can make sure I can do the best I can for our clients. I'm all in favor of it. But that's also the point where it gets very dangerous very fast, as we've just illustrated today. If you don't know some of the tips, the little techniques, like the one you're holding right now, Craig.
Okay,
How would you put that on the
I'm
wall?
gonna try this.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna come up here and first of all, I'll remember what you told me earlier. I'm gonna pick, when we were talking about the floor, I'm gonna pick drywall.
Yep.
Okay, pick drywall. And then immediately I'm gonna come up here. Let's just say the water came up to about this level here. I'm gonna come up here and just put it right there.
Yeah.
Okay. And immediately I get nothing. Okay, what did I do wrong?
Well, so first thing is what we want to do is we actually want to turn it, right? So there's two things that are going to happen here that we have to remember, because when I turn this, if it doesn't read moisture, I'm prefacing that it's not broken. So we also have to remember,
Why the walls dry?
we did surface moisture. Well, we did surface moisture. Think about
I'm
it.
denying this.
When you, I got it. I hear you. But I'll put it on the floor to prove that it still works. So if we put it on there and it doesn't read anything, it's because we did surface moisture. That moisture is going to dry pretty quick. It didn't get into
And
this
that's,
drywall.
again, that's
Yeah.
non-penetrating, but it's going into the drywall, seeing
That's right.
how it's, okay.
Right.
Okay, so that makes it immediate.
so
Yeah,
you're
I
probably-
did it wrong immediately.
Yeah, no, that's okay. With the drywall's
Yeah.
dry. So you're perfect. Look, you're a mitigator.
Okay.
You dried it out just that fast.
Exactly.
So, but here's what it is, the difference in what you did. And again, those small things, Dave, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
When you're doing this, you actually, if you put both of these pads, they're basically reading on top of each other, but you're getting a much more narrow scope and you're moving up and down. What we're trying to do is bottom up. So what you want to do with this meter when you go to do a reading is you want to do it horizontally. I've got a wider berth. I'm taking a larger, think of it like a sample area. I'm taking a larger sample area to where I can make sure that I'm reading as much of this surface as I can. All right, so everybody that's watching this doesn't think that we're full of it. I throw it on the carpet and sweat, right? So that's the reality with this meter. And with what we did, this dries out pretty quick. It also goes to show you, look, you spill a glass of water, you don't need to call us. It's okay, it'll dry. But
Unless it's red wine.
if you want to, you can. But the point is, when material's wet, it takes some time. I mean, it's gonna soak in. I would tell you, we have a better chance of this wood, and you can see it right here with some of the discoloration. This wood will get wet much faster because this wet carpet is sitting up against the wood and it's just drawing it up, just like a sponge.
Okay, I do want to test something since I don't know anything about this and don't know how to use it. So let's just say I was down here and I'm gonna do the knee test.
That's perfect.
And I test it down here. Okay, boom. And then I bring it up here immediately. Okay. See, what I was trying to see if,
See if the residual moisture on the
yeah,
pad.
see if, and I could see somebody doing that, going immediately from here, getting a 30 and immediately bringing it up here. And was there any residual moisture that caused that meter to stay high? But in this case, it stayed around 5, just over 5. And if I dry it off, it's the same. So I guess there's no residual moisture that comes from here to there.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's another thing that I was just curious how that would operate.
And you have to
If it would
remember,
cause that.
it's pushing into this material. And here's the other
Oh
piece.
yeah, forgot about that
When-
again. See,
yeah.
that's twice I forgot about that.
So when we threw the bucket on the wall,
And so it's pushing it into the material. Again, like we just did, I'm putting it on the wall thinking that I'm reading the surface of the wall when actually this device is not reading the surface of the wall.
yeah,
that right?
and that's absolutely right.
Okay.
When you're on wet, now if something is wet, it'll bang right, like what you saw on the carpet. What we also have to remember is when I was throwing that water, and this is not to get too nerdy about it, but the water that was sheeting up here was much thinner, not a whole lot. This technically got much wetter. If we pulled back out the thermal, you could see this temperature of the material is going to increasingly get lower because there's more moisture making it cooler as we go down. And so when we did the test up here and you said, see, it's not doing anything, different reading than when you come down here.
Yeah.
So surface is going to go pretty quick, but the biggest thing to remember if you're using these non-penetrating is get a good horizontal. Doesn't have to press hard, but make sure both those pads have good contact and go ahead and get your reading. The scale's the biggest part because that's the tough part, especially if you're moving through a whole loss and you're going wood floor, carpet, drywall, bouncing around. They've got stained concrete. You've got to make sure you shift these scales every time or you're going to get some false readings.
Right.
Yep.
That's
Vital. which, good gracious.
So understanding all these devices are really very important. Like, you know, like we saw this one gives you the image, the cool and the hot, and it's really just kind of getting your temperature out there. And then as we just discussed this one, you know, you're penetrating, non-penetrating the drywall, but you're getting that kind of that echo, or that's what that's the sonar kind of reading. And then you have your penetrating devices like this. I mean, as an adjuster, like I pointed out when we're talking about flood and being a flood adjuster, you know, we don't really, it's an unspoken rule not to use these. But if you're looking at a house and you're going through and you can't really find a water line with the policyholder saying, oh yeah, the water was clear, it came in, it got to a certain height, and you're not seeing that, then maybe now and then something like this would be just for your own reporting, would be to go and look and go, okay, I am finding moisture here. I am seeing something in the wall here. Now I need to find an expert, go out there and get somebody that really understands this device and really can help me determine how much damage do I have in here and how much flooding that I have in there, because we're not able to see it. And that is, you know, I repeat, that's a rare situation that you'll come into that. But now and then you do need something like this, or I recommend something like this, just in case of one of those situations that you need to do that additional documentation to support the claim, to support the damages. You're not going to rely on this. This is not your everything tool that you stick in the wall and, oh, yeah, it's flood, oh, yeah, it's flood, oh, yeah, it's flood. That's not how we're doing it. I'm probably the same thing for property. I mean, David and the property team and everybody, they're not going to use these around and plug them in and everything and say, yep, got a moisture reading. But it's kind of a fallback device. I don't see it. They say it's here. Let me check it. I see it's here. Okay, based on now I know how to properly use this thing. And the one to properly use, I'm gonna really poke myself here in just a second, probably as I probably around like, but I'll probably use this device. Can you get this at Home Depot?
Nope.
Well, never mind then.
No, but you can get it. John Don sells them, which is a supplier that's, you know, more for professionals. Yeah.
But this, like I said, it's good to know how this device works, how to use it, and also think about this, when you're looking at a mitigation estimate. I mean, mitigation estimate, and I wouldn't say you guys, but other companies out there that solely use this device. Now you understand how to use this, and if they're solely using the FLIR, is that how I pronounce it? FLIR. If they're solely using this, now you know how to look at their report and say, okay, I see what you're reporting here, but does not give me the information that I need.
100%.
And you can go back to them and say, okay, I'm aware of what this device does or this device is, but I don't have the proper readings. I don't have this, I don't have that to actually support what the information that you're giving me and providing me. So that just gives you an opportunity to say, okay, I understand how to use these now. Because honestly, when I walked in, I've seen them. I've seen the readings, and I see like this one right here where it goes up to 30 and you can tell that's moisture. But I didn't understand how they actually properly work and if you're using them the right way. And so it's very important as an adjuster in the property side, the flood side, and to really understand how to use them the right way. And that's what I appreciate you actually having us out here.
My pleasure.
Throwing water on your wall. And now what we actually could do is we could have another episode about how to dry your wall, which we actually have already done, which by the way is episode 3 on our YouTube channel.
Right.
Episode 3, it's I forget the title of it, ServPro of Mobile County, drying, something like that. But definitely check that out along with all our other episodes that we have on there, because there's some great information we had. Just like T. John, like I said, he's an expert in the industry. He's an expert in what he does. He knows what he's talking about on those moisture meters and all this other good stuff. And he brings that very valuable and very awesome knowledge to us that we can actually provide to you all, so that when you're out there and you run into somebody like T. John, you can go up and say, I know how to use this thing. So
That's good.
questions, comments? We have.
No, it's just invaluable as far as what we've learned. We keep saying it, but I'll just say it again. Knowing when you get a report from the estimate, and now you know why they used all this and what it means, instead of just denying it, saying, no, that's bullcrap, I'm not paying for that.
Yeah.
Or it just write a check for it. Just take the time to learn it, and it builds your confidence, and you understand it so much better.
Okay, that's the best thing. That's the biggest thing, is if we're all kind of getting better in this industry, That's the best part, because that's the big thing that we talk about. We talk quite a bit about is how many people are out there. I was telling a story before we went on camera to Craig about a flood where a guy was using just a FLIR to tell people if their houses were dry or wet. And he was the owner of the whole business. He was an independent in Louisiana, and I'm going, that's totally wrong.
Yeah.
And we need people to understand it more so we can kind of drive the legitimacy of what we do and make sure people get taken care of and they trust us. That's the biggest thing. This is a trust-based industry. I mean,
100%.
my brother had a water loss at an apartment that they had up in Auburn, and he said, I'll be honest, I don't understand anything you do. And I said, okay. And I said, why? He goes, well, because it didn't look wet. I mean, I saw water at one point, and then we had a good friends of ours who owned the ServPro up there. They took care of it. But he said they came in, they sucked it up, but then they said it was drying for 3 days. It looked dry when they left the first day. They stuck a bunch of stuff in walls and floors and this and that, and they kept telling me it was wet, but I couldn't tell. They ran all this equipment, they left, and then they handed me a bill for X. He goes, it doesn't make any sense. I said, well, you're right. It's pixie dust. You can't tangibly grab it.
Mhm.
So there has to be trust. And the way we build trust is properly using tools like these, including good reporting to adjusters through dry reports and the data that we pull from these, putting them into those reports, so everybody can have that level of trust to say, yep, that all makes sense. It makes sense.
That's right.
And the more understanding we have of the devices, as the adjusters have the devices, the more we can have that communication. So we're building that trust back and forth.
Mhm.
You don't think that I'm just an adjuster who just all of a sudden got his license yesterday and now is out trying to adjust a claim.
Right.
Which we see that happen, unfortunately, way too often. But, you know, we build that professionalism in this industry so that we're helping you, you're helping us. And at the end of the day, we are just, I mean, both of us, we're customers. We're handling customers as well, which is the policyholder. And that's what we're out here to do, is take care of the customer, which is the policyholder. And the way we can work together does a better service to the policyholder, does a better service to the customer, does a better service to the company as well. And that's ultimately what we come out to do. So understanding, again, these tools, not just for everyday use, but just having the knowledge so that we can have this conversation. So I can say, this is penetrating, and you can say, yes, you're right.
That's right. Gold star.
Makes a better adjuster. So again,
I've got nothing. It's been terrific.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I need y'all to get out of here so we can tie this up.
I appreciate your time. Appreciate you having us out here facilities. I guess we'll go ahead and open up for questions. So if anybody has any questions, Julie, can you see if there's any questions in the chat box there? And then we'll open up for questions. And if not, again, before we get to questions, again, appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. So yeah, we're gonna let you. We're gonna take some questions, and then we're gonna let you cut off the camera, and we're gonna let you start cleaning up.
Yeah, we got some people. We got people. They'll knock it out.
Yeah.
So we'll get it done.
Yeah. Well, sure, to start bringing them now. So
Yeah.
again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody's involvement in it. Again, appreciate your time,
My
and
pleasure.
appreciate everybody joining us here on this Thursday again for another episode of CNC's Claims Corner. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions. Are you guys there? Hello? Hello? You guys there?
Yeah,
Okay.
getting the video. Very high tech. Can you hear us?
Yes. Okay. So, two questions go together, T. John. What was the orange meter, and what was the model number and all? And do you have to have it calibrated? And if so, how often?
Yeah, so it was, and I think somebody who was actually on the presentation threw this answer up too, which is great. It's a Delmhorst BD 2100. It's a really common meter. There's, like I said in the presentation, there's tons of really high-tech versions that are much, much more expensive, but that version's perfect. And it's pretty simple to use and pretty straightforward. As far as calibration, yes. I saw that one pop up as we were watching the video as well. And you do want to, there's no specific timing around calibration, obviously highly because it's based on how much you use it. If you use it a ton, we typically look at ours and we'll kind of test them to see how they're calibrating. We'll put meters against each other. Every year, every 2 years, year and a half to 2 years is probably about what you're looking at when you need to send it back off to Delmhorst and get them to recalibrate it.
Okay, and you said you got that kit from,
John Don. So the kit we build, you can buy the box and then we do little foam cutouts where it's easy. You create the inserts, but John Don is where you can buy all of it. They have a website, jondon.com, I believe. And you can go through and find all those meters. And I think you can even, I know you can even just buy the box and then do foam cutouts if to make it easy for you to carry it around.
and do they work on stone?
The penetrating, it has
The
a
floor.
setting for stone, concrete, all of those kind of high density, semi-porous materials. But the reality is it just doesn't functionally work as well with the penetrating because you obviously can't punch through stone or concrete. That's where the non-pin really comes in handy on those.
And okay, so this question is, oh wait, I'm sorry, the thing jumped on me. If a contractor remediation specialist is present and is it best to have them take the moisture measurement?
Instead of the adjuster taking the measurements?
Yes, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Again, we talked about this that day. I mean, I love to
That
educate.
was 5 minutes ago.
I know, that's right. Sorry, 5 minutes ago. We did a quick wardrobe change too. So yeah, I mean, I love that everybody's getting educated, but I will always default to, if you can, let the mitigator do what the mitigator does and put the onus and put the liability on them. And absolutely, if they're in the house, and I don't know, again, I get in trouble sometimes because I generalize my opinion around the industry, but to me, any mitigator worth their salt should not have an issue with an adjuster grabbing them by the arm and going, hey, can you walk around with me real quick and help me, take a couple readings so I can really see what these measurements are and what you're seeing in these different areas.
Okay, and the next two questions are probably more for David and Craig, and they all kind of go together. Do the carriers we work with prefer using moisture meter? And then we have for Craig, in flood, will we honor the meter readings and will you write drywall based on the moisture meeting moisture, good Lord. That.
Moisture meter?
So to answer your question is, no, we should not replace drywall based on a moisture meeting. I can't even say it now. Moisture meter reading. We should not, it's because like what the policy says, the provisions of the policy states, it needs to be direct physical loss by from flow. We need to see the physical change to the property. If there's a situation where you think it's wet, yes, you can possibly use a moisture meter just to kind of give a test of it, but you still need to find that direct physical loss. It may be wet, but it could be dried. Is it actually still salvageable or is it non-salvageable? Those questions. But so what we're looking for in the way the policy stated, we have to find that direct physical loss. We have to see that the physical change to the property in order to make that recommendation for payment.
David, do you have anything?
We must have lost him.
Okay. Now someone said, I've always thought an independent adjuster should only do non-damage destructive measurements. Isn't that right? Well, yes, that's pretty much what we said. It's you, especially in flood, you want to use the your measuring tape and measure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Who?
Well, I guess, Craig, I mean, I think the non-penetrating, it's not destructive, and I don't see where you couldn't use that to verify, like Craig was saying.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
You know,
you can
we-
use it like we talked about. We use it for verification. That's really what we're looking for, verification. There may be a situation where it's not really clear. We're going to use it to verify, and then we're going to look for that physical change to the property. That still doesn't mean, if we haven't seen the physical change, probably doesn't mean we have to replace the item. The item could be dry. You go out there and just dry it.
I mean, in David's world, absolutely. I mean, look, our construction division would love to say that every time something's wet, we pull it out and put something new back in, but that's just not the reality of it. That's the whole reason we have dehumidifiers and air movers, is because that's their purpose, is to salvage as much as possible.
Okay, and I see one more, and I'm not quite sure. Anyway, I may need you to elaborate, but it says, can you use it for drywall when you cut the drywall out?
Are you just testing the drywall at that point? I guess is that the question? I mean, if you're really if you're taking the drywall out, there's obviously a reason why you should be taking it out. It's obviously showing some type of damage to it. So there's a situation where you're going to take it out in that case. If you've taken the drywall and you're removing it to replace it, then there's really no point in using a moisture meter at that time, because you're going to have to replace it anyway. It may have mold on it. It may have mold on the backside of it, whatever. I mean, we're not replacing it because we're not testing the mold or doing anything with the mold. We're just taking the item away and replacing with a new item because of the situation, like where it's wet or mold or something like that on there. So hope that answers the question.
Well, and I'll take, and I don't know if this is a question that was being asked, but I'll take a bit more of a pessimistic view. Maybe if the question was, can you test drywall that has been removed, obviously, meaning, hey, how do I know if that drywall is truly wet, and did they just pull it because they wanted to pull it, or did it really need to be pulled? The answer is yes. I mean, you can still, material's wet if it's still stuck to or nailed to a stud, or if it's sitting in a dumpster. It is going to dry much faster. So just be aware and be a little bit cautious of, logic usually rules the day. If you show up and that drywall was pulled, I don't know, 4 days ago, whatever it may be, and you go stick a meter in it and it reads dry, you probably don't want to quick charge the mitigator and go, oh, it's all this dry. You did it for no reason.
Yeah.
Maybe it was dry when he pulled it, but it absolutely will dry quickly, more quickly once it's pulled from the structure.
Or if you test it and it's wet,
could have rained.
And then you really look at the weather report and it rained 20 minutes before that. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is it technically possible? Absolutely. But it could be a bit precarious to try to make some sort of judgment call if the drywall should have been removed or not, based off of what its conditions are once it's been pulled.
Okay, so this is one we actually discussed before, and so this is a good one. It's I was always afraid to use the penetrating meter because of the damages to the drywall it will cause. As an independent adjuster, how would someone address the holes it causes if there ends up not being moisture in the area?
Yeah, so I think in obviously I know it's on YouTube, so it may be worth, I think it's right off the bat in the beginning of the video when we grab that penetrating meter. I absolutely, for all the years we've been doing this, taking that approach or that technique, if you didn't happen to see it, of putting those needles or those probes into that joint right where a piece of base connects at the top with or piece of base hits the top of the drywall, kind of getting right into that joint is the best way to do it, and without anyone really seeing that penetration point or those two really small holes. If you do that, I've never had an issue. I've never had a customer, have a problem with us taking the readings there, saying that we damaged something. Even if we could, to your point, salvage the drywall and the base, we didn't even have to pull baseboards. Possibly it was just testing. But traditionally, we will start with that non-pin meter in those situations, so we don't cause any damage. But that's your best bet, is just try to get right in that seam if you can.
Okay, it's the flood question. For a mitigator finding moisture in the drywall shall remove the drywall, correct?
Yeah, if it's a flood situation, well, easiest way for probably me to answer it, if it is a Cat 3 situation or it's a Cat 3 loss, 100%. Frankly, you can poke holes in it all you want because that drywall is coming out. Yep. There's no drying there.
Okay, that looks like all the questions we have.
Hey,
So
Julie,
I
can you hear
will
me?
turn it over to you guys.
Yes, David, go ahead.
Hey, sorry about that. I had it on.
Mute. Okay.
No, I think one of the questions I think Julie mentioned before was, does all the carriers, correct me if I'm wrong, all the carriers require, using the moisture meter, and not all of them do that we work with. That's going to be carrier specific, but to my knowledge, want those in the inspection photos and of course your documentation, and some don't require it. So I think that was the question.
So we had one more. I saw a question just pop up. What is your YouTube channel? And that is our CNC Catastrophe and National Claims. It's our channel. And you just go in there and subscribe. And, obviously when you subscribe to YouTube, it's free. But we will have this broadcast, this episode up there within the next 20 minutes, right, Jeremiah? So yeah, he just gave me the thumbs up. We'll have this one up there in the next 20 minutes. No, we'll have this one up there in the next at least 24 to 48 hours, maybe 72 hours, somewhere after that. We'll have this broadcast up there, plus all the other broadcasts we had from the first one we had of the year already with Hal, and then our previous two seasons of Flood News and Noon episodes that we did, where again we met with T. John at the facility and we talked about drying equipment. That's a great episode as well. So, we're talking about moisture meters and things like that, and drying as part of that whole process. Well, check out that episode, which
Episode
is
three.
Episode 3 from last season, episode 3. It's just really interesting, again, to understand the equipment and how it works, so that we're not out there setting up the equipment, the drying equipment, saying, oh, we're going to dry your property for you because we're an expert at this. But when you walk out there in a situation like the drying equipment, you immediately know that air mover's in the wrong place. This dehumidifier should not be in here. This should be over there. And you can have that education. You can have that conversation with the policyholder and the contractors involved and the remediation company, everybody who's involved in the process. You can walk them through that. Same thing like we're talking about the moisture meters. We're not going to be going around and sticking holes and checking meters and writing stuff down and taking logs or whatever y'all do. But we have that education and understanding how these things work. So when somebody does say, hey, look, the wall's blue, that means there's moisture in it, immediately we can go, not necessarily. Let's do more investigation of this. Let's find out more, because it could just be a temperature difference that we're looking at. And so that's, like I said before, when we're talking about the flood, that's why we need to see the direct physical loss. That's why the policy provisions state that direct physical loss by or from flood to the following. And then we have to go through those steps. But in the situations where we need to understand these tools, that's why we're here having these conversations, so we can understand better when we're communicating. If I get out there and T. John's out there on a property, he knows what I'm talking about. I know what he's talking about. And that's what the benefit of all this is for. So I believe we're out of time, and I think there's no more questions for that. So again, if you jump on our YouTube channel, I have trouble saying that for some reason, YouTube channel, past 2 episodes were Flood News at Noon. The new series, like I said, it's called Claims Corner. Just take a look at all those great videos out there. There's really, really valuable information out there for everybody. So again, thanks for joining us today, T. John. And for all those who joined us today, took the time out of your day for an hour to jump on, I appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing y'all in a couple of weeks again. So thank you. Y'all have an excellent day. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.